Hello there, and welcome to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Today we are in Symmes Township with Dave Zevering at the Meade Historic House. Hello there, Dave. How are you doing today?
Hi. Fine. Doing fine.
Let's start from the beginning. Tell us about Mr. Meade, or I guess Dr. Meade.
Yes. Dr. Meade, originally from Indiana. He came to the Cincinnati area as a homeopathic physician.
Homeopathic, really?
And ended up as the president of the Pulte Medical School here in Cincinnati, which was a homeopathic medical school. And he was interested and was very good at training and breeding racehorses, trotters and pacers. And he bought this farm. It's originally about 250 acres out here in Symmes Township around the turn of the century. He developed it into a horse farm, and he built this Greek Revival home, and had a training track and had caretakers and had basically a horse farm. And at the same time, he became the president of the Hamilton County Fair Board, and that's when that was a big deal, and he was involved with racing and with the trotters and the pacers. He lived out here for about 17 years and moved back to Cincinnati to continue his practice as a physician. And then the house was sold and then passed on.
How long did he live in this house?
About 17 years.
17 years.
He had a family, had some children, and kind of feel that maybe he went back to Cincinnati because of their education. Either way, the house was sold a couple times, and it never retained the grandeur that it did when he was here.
Sure.
The families that took it over maintained it the best they could. The farming wasn't that good in this area, and eventually the Depression hit, and that put an end to the farm as it was first developed.
So this whole area that we see was a farm, and all of these trees is
farm. Right.
A new growth forest.
all the trees are new. This was all, well, even up into about the 60s, it was all farmland going all the way out to Montgomery Road, and it really wasn't very well adapted to crops or that type of farming. There were several orchards in the area. There were some livestock raising and that type of thing, but they just could not make an adequate living the way they were trying to farm it. So eventually, once the Depression hit, it was sold off in parcels, and the owners at the time built some of these houses in the neighborhood.
Part of the change.
Part of the.
Let me ask you: Did Dr. Meade build this house then?
Yes, he built it.
Okay.
Or had it built.
Right.
And the legend has it that his wife was from Virginia, and that he built the house in the Greek Revival style.
That's why we have the big columns.
So she'd feel at home. So whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but it makes some sense. So there's a good chance it is true. Yeah, and it has the classic Greek Revival type architecture and living style. Of course, it's got the well in the back. The kitchen was coal or wood fired.
Tell me a little bit about that well. And was there a windmill on top of it?
Yeah, there's a windmill that ran the house and part of the horse farm.
And the well would pump the water? Is that what you were saying?
The windmill would pump the water.
Wow.
And supposedly they were able to get pressure into the house, a pressurized system at the time. Of course, without all the trees in the area, they probably had a better wind supply.
Sure.
But the well's still active. It still works. The windmill's, I replaced the windmill, so it's still functional and it works fine. It's kind of, a lot of people who've never seen a windmill kind of stare at it. So,
right.
It's part of the reason to preserve it.
You think of the big Dutch windmills, but not one that's right above the pump.
The little ones, and
they have a purpose as well.
It's still functional. It could still water gardens. It could still,
after all this
house.
time. Interesting.
Yeah.
So in the house, it's beautiful inside. The flooring is got all of this different detail, and there's kind of a bright green rug. Was that there for?
No, that was put in later. It had runners, and it's got that maple hardwood floor underneath it.
And the maple hardwood floor was original?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, that's all original.
Beautiful detail.
That's all original. Yeah. And see, the wood, the framing, it's all oak, and that came from the property. And there was a sawmill down over the hill, and supposedly it came from there. Now, they were, I guess, I'm not real proud of some of their building techniques, and engineering, and their architecture.
Well, let's talk about that. So there are a couple of owners, and then you ended up purchasing the property?
My parents bought it in 1950.
Okay.
And it was
how many acres was it then?
It was about 5.
5. So we've gone from 250 acres, and when your parents bought it, there was 5 acres.
And it was a chicken farm.
Oh, okay.
So we had about 10,000 chickens.
10,000?
Up to 10,000, yes. Raised back there, and raised them for meat, and they just cycle through so many a month. And they kept the chicken farm for several years, and then as the times changed and transportation got better, the chicken business moved south, where you didn't have to have heated barns and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then my mother was a registered nurse, and they started a small nursing home. And they ran that until the 80s.
So they got out of the chicken farming business, and then your parents built a nursing home behind the house.
They tore down the chicken barn, and then in the same location built the nursing home.
And still lived in the house while running the nursing facility, nursing home.
Yes, they did.
And how big was the nursing home facility?
10 patients.
10 patients.
Just
okay.
10. It was really started out ahead of its time, but then it sort of by the 60s and 70s, then the nursing homes as we know it started developing. And by this time they were ready to retire anyway.
So when they had moved out of the house, or
no, we lived there the whole time.
So they'd lived until they had
until
they had rested final.
Yes.
And then you were an only child, so you had taken over.
Yes, I was able to take it over. Of course, I'd been in the Army, and I was in the aviation business, so I was always going someplace, but this was always home. And I had a caretaker who lived in, remodeled the old nursing home business, or the old nursing home building, and somebody was living here, so it worked out.
I know it was home, but it had to seem like a big project to take over. What made you think, I can do this?
It's all I knew. It was always home.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a hobby, remodeling it and bringing it back up to standards and modernizing it so that it could be livable.
Tell me some of those things that you had to modernize.
Well, the walls had to be furred out and insulated. The roof had to be pretty much replaced because the old oak beams had been overloaded and were bowed, so the roof wasn't right, and that was a major project. Then there'd been like several coats of paint on what should have been nice staircase and the type of wood that didn't show anymore because it was all painted over with coats of paint.
So tell me, Dave, did you have anybody helping you to restore the?
Not really. It was like a hobby, and I learned a lot, and I knew people in the business, and they'd help me out, and I'd got it done. I think it turned out pretty well. There's there's some things that just really can't be fixed. There's some bowing, and there's some
just part of time
in certain areas. But then it had, originally built, it didn't have electricity and didn't have very much running water, so all that had to be put in. And electricity.
What did they have to keep the place warm?
They had a settling tank, and they had a coal furnace. So they ran on coal, and they had fireplaces upstairs and 2 downstairs, plus the kitchen. And had either a coal or wood cook stove, which was I replaced with a wood burning heating stove. And it worked out fairly well. And the upstairs, there's basically 4 bedrooms upstairs, and then the 3rd floor, which is an attic. It was never finished. It could have been a couple more children's room or bedrooms or something else. And of course they had Meade had a maid that lived upstairs in one of the bedrooms at the top of the back stairs.
Okay.
So, she evidently took care of the kids and the meals or whatever else. I imagine it was, kind of sparse out here at the time.
Right,
with not much going on.
Yeah.
Except for the horse farm.
And I saw there was a gas line in there, so after...
Well, eventually put gas in. When I was growing up here, we had coal stove and a stoker. Then eventually put in gas, and then got city water, and kind of modernized it, made it livable, because it's kind of neat looking building, but trying to live in it without modern conveniences is kind of difficult.
Yeah, I would think so. And, so whatever happened to the nursing home? I don't see that anymore.
They closed it down. It closed, and when the township took it over, they weren't real sure what they wanted to do with it, and they had some plans and they had some good ideas, but it just didn't fit. So they tore it down. And at the time, it had been converted into a caretaker's quarters, which worked fine, except that it just didn't fit on the property.
Right.
Now they've
brought it back as much as they could to what it could have been.
Yeah, that, and they wanted to. They're talking now about building, either finding or building a replica barn in the back and bringing it back to as authentic as they can.
How long did you live in the house for?
Well, I was here from 50 to 2004.
2004.
That's when it's when it was sold.
And what made you decide to sell the property?
Well, I got to the point where I had to do something. I had to come up with an idea, because I couldn't live there forever, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Cutting the grass and trimming the trees and everything else, and I just had to come up with some kind of idea, because there are a few people that were interested in buying it, but they'd have the same situation I'd be in. And newer families, they didn't want to live in a museum.
Right.
And the township at the time was starting to realize that they're running out of land, and they were trying to develop their park system. They talked to me a couple times in the 90s, and then eventually it came to the point where it's now or never. So I was willing to sell it to them at a really good price, and I think it worked out that everybody was pretty happy with it, especially a lot of the neighbors and everybody but the developers.
Yeah.
They
well, tell me about, why do you think it's more important to preserve property like this than to develop it into another neighborhood?
You got to have places for people. Got to live somewhere.
Right.
But you can't develop every square inch, and you got to have recreation. You got to have a environment where nature can have a home, and you can't just destroy everything, cut down all the trees, and then come up with all this modern type of agriculture or plants or whatever else you want that happens to be in vogue at the time, because nature has been here for a long time, and it needs certain types of plants and native species and the like, so that we have wildlife and we have something besides just us in a soccer field.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it worked out, and then I think a lot of people around the country are starting to realize that big lawns and fancy lawns and all the mowing and all the chemicals and everything else you got to do to maintain them isn't what really looks that good anyway. You need kind of some native habitat and some native species, and let God take care of it.
Yeah. Well, you did your part. There were a couple of trees in the back that you said you'd planted from seedlings.
There's a lot of them around here, and it makes me feel really old looking at them, because that's one right there.
Really?
And a couple other ones. A couple of them have been here since I was a kid, so they're really old. A lot of them just grew on their own, and I think Township deserves a lot of credit for taking care of the place and buying it in the first place, because I think it worked out for everybody in the neighborhood, and I know a lot of people enjoy the property for them and their dogs and whatever else they want to do.
There are people at the park right now. So.
Yeah.
Now, when you first walk in the door, you see a bench, and I know that maybe take your shoes off, but
no, nobody really knows, but they sort of feel that room in to the left or the south is was the office for Dr. Meade.
So he would practice in the home.
If he was practicing, he might have his patients wait there at the bench, or maybe it was just the way they built the place. I don't know, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
If he had some kind of a practice going, or his office with his horse business, whatever else he did.
Right.
So, yeah, it's got a, it was his life, really. I mean, when he built the place, and his wife and kids and everybody going along,
and at the time there was nothing here. I keep hearing that.
No, there wasn't much.
So it really would have been a home in the country.
It was a home, yeah.
And when you lived here, it was.
Yeah, I mean, people made fun of you living out here. You figured, you live where? And of course, they had the schoolhouse down the road here, and Loveland was always. It was.
Did you go to that school?
No.
No. Okay.
It was so behind the times when I got old enough to go to that high school. Went to.
Gotcha.
That they were doing half-day classes, and it was just that. So there's a group of us from here that went to McNicholas over in Mount Washington, which was terrible.
Gotcha.
It was just too far, and it really got a good education though. But,
I did want to ask you one thing. On the front by the windows, there are these gorgeous tiles. Were they anywhere else on the building?
Yeah, the whole roof was tiled like that.
The roof was tiled.
The roof was tiled like that. The barn in the back, the old cow barn was tiled. Originally, they had real heavy concrete tiles that overloaded the roof, but they repaired a lot of that. But it was still a problem. That's why I had to replace the roof. But yeah, and they were originally red, so they've been painted when they painted the house. So it was red brick for years.
So it wasn't always a white house,
No.
Just the columns were.
No, the columns, I think they had them painted.
Okay.
But the story is in Greek Revival houses, they painted them white to resemble stone and marble or whatever they used. So they'd look authentic, because a lot of them weren't always brick. They were wood. So it just depended. They liked the style, the pillars and the doors and the
Pretty grand.
symmetrical.
And what are you hoping for the future of this property or other historic buildings?
You know, in 1999, there was a tornado came through here.
Mm.
And if it were a few hundred yards south, it would probably taken a house. And that could happen again, or something could happen overnight that the house disappear.
Yeah.
My idea from the beginning was to save the green space and to have the trails and the wildlife and woodlands and all that, because that's not going to go away, or if it does, it'll come back.
Come back, yeah.
But the house is, yeah, it's nice.
It's kind of like the house brings people here, but to explore the nature.
I mean, people drive by, and I guess the new generation have no clue, you know, why it's there, or what happened, or what it's about. A lot of the, you know, the new generation, you know, I've been telling them for years, they built that log cabin back there, and they got the bathrooms that kind of look like a log. And I said, half this township thinks that bathroom is a log cabin because you couldn't see it until they mowed down all the honeysuckle. So, but yeah, I mean, it's here, and I think as time goes on, it should be appreciated more, I hope. And I know that people appreciate the trail, and they appreciate walking their dogs and everything else that they can do on a piece of property. And there's a lot of people that live in these subdivisions around here that they just walk to it. You don't have to drive. They just walk to it, and if they want to take a long walk, they can just keep on going all the way down to the Symmes Park and around.
Well,
it works out for everybody.
It's so nice to have the face to the person who had helped to create this park.
Well, you know, I'm glad it happened, and I feel good about it all the time. And I don't really care about it, just the way fate worked out that I was able to do it, because you know there's 100 reasons why I wouldn't have been able to, but I was able to afford to do what I wanted to do and can give it to them at a good price. And I wish I could have been able just to give it to them, but
right.
It worked out.
I think so.
I think everybody.
We're here today.
Yeah, I think everybody should appreciate it, and it hopefully will be here for a few more generations.
I hope so too. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dave Zievering.
Okay, well, thank you for coming out.
My name is Chrissy Morgan, and you were just watching another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Today we were at the historic Meade House, originally owned by Dr. Charles Meade. We're in Symmes Township, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. Remember, travel slowly and stop often.